The house next door had been vacant for months, its windows dark, its lawn overgrown. Then, 6 months ago, Mr. Collins moved in. At 60, he was older than most of the neighbors, but there was something about him, a quiet confidence, a presence that filled a space without needing to demand it. Emma noticed him almost immediately. She hadn't meant to, not consciously. But in the morning light, as she watered the plants on her porch, she'd see him, shirtless, his body surprisingly toned for his age, moving with an ease that didn't match the years on his face. He'd offer a nod, sometimes a slow smile, nothing more. Yet, she found herself lingering. Her own husband, David, was different now. Once attentive, his kisses now felt like a formality, a muscle memory rather than desire. Work consumed him, late nights at the office, early mornings spent answering emails before even looking at her. Conversations between them had shrunk to the size of grocery lists and scheduling conflicts. She hadn't realized how lonely she was. Not until the night she saw Mr. Collins taking a shower. It had been an accident at first. She was in the backyard, locking up for the night, when she glanced toward his house. The bathroom window was slightly open, a sliver of yellow light spilling into the darkness. And there, through the fogged glass, was the outline of his body, broad shoulders, the strong curve of his back, the way water streamed down his skin. Emma should have turned away. Instead, she stood there, heart pounding, breath caught in her throat. A heat, unexpected and unwelcome, curled in her stomach. It wasn't love, not even lust exactly, but a hunger for something she couldn't name. Then suddenly he moved, his head tilted just slightly, as if he knew. Emma stepped back into the shadows, pulse hammering. Had he seen her? For the rest of the night, guilt gnawed at her. She told herself it meant nothing, just a fleeting moment of curiosity. But when morning came, she found her thoughts drifting back to the image of him behind that glass, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than numbness. And that terrified her. The morning after that moment by the window, Emma felt strange. It wasn't just guilt, it was something heavier, something unspoken that settled beneath her skin. She moved through the house on autopilot, brewing coffee, folding laundry, responding to David's absent-minded "love you" as he left for work. But her mind was elsewhere. Had Mr. Collins seen her? It was a ridiculous thought. He hadn't turned fully, hadn't acknowledged her. It had been a coincidence, a trick of the light. And yet, when she stepped onto the porch later that morning, she found herself hesitating before glancing toward his house. The side gate was open. She had never noticed it before, an old wooden gate that led to his backyard. And standing just beyond it, watering a row of potted plants, was Mr. Collins himself. He looked up, catching her gaze before she could look away. "Morning, Emma," he said, his voice deep, carrying easily across the space between them. She swallowed. "Morning." He set the hose down, wiping his hands on a rag slung over his shoulder. "Hope I didn't keep you up last night. Had a bit of trouble with the hot water, kept going in and out." Emma's breath hitched. Was that an innocent remark? Her mind raced, but her face remained neutral. "Oh, I hadn't noticed." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Not teasing, not accusatory, just knowing. She cleared her throat, shifting on her feet. "Settling in all right?"
"Yeah."
"It's quiet around here." He looked at her a moment longer before adding, "A little too quiet sometimes." Her pulse jumped at that. The words were harmless, but the weight behind them wasn't. Before she could respond, the sound of a phone vibrating broke the moment. She glanced down at her pocket. David. She hesitated, then rejected the call. When she looked back up, Mr. Collins was watching her. "Busy morning?" he asked. "Not really," she admitted. "Just avoiding emails." He nodded like he understood. "Then I'll keep you from them a little longer. Come in for coffee." The invitation was casual, but her body tensed. A line had been drawn in the sand. She should say no. She should step back, make an excuse, walk away. But instead, she found herself saying, "All right." And as she stepped through the open gate, she felt, for the first time in years, awake. The moment Emma stepped into Mr. Collins' kitchen, she felt it. Not danger, not exactly, but something charged, expectant, an awareness that she shouldn't be here, yet she had chosen to be. The space was surprisingly well kept, a mix of old and new. Dark wooden cabinets framed sleek countertops, and the air carried the scent of fresh coffee and something earthy, familiar, sandalwood, maybe. He motioned toward a chair by the small dining table. "Make yourself comfortable." She sat, fingers skimming the rim of her coffee mug when he placed it in front of her. No distance between them felt safe. "How long have you lived here?" she asked, anything to break the silence. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. 6 months, but I still don't feel settled." His gaze flickered over her, unreadable. "Maybe I haven't had a reason to." Her stomach tightened. "Maybe you just need time." He smiled, slow and deliberate. "Or maybe I need a little distraction." Emma exhaled too sharply and took a sip of coffee to steady herself. The heat scalded her tongue, but she welcomed the distraction. "How about you?" he asked, eyes never leaving her. "Been in this neighborhood long?" "Almost 8 years." She traced the edge of her mug. "Feels longer some days." "David must keep you busy." The way he said her husband's name sent a shiver down her spine. Casual, but weighted, like he was testing how it sat between them. "He works a lot," she admitted. "Late nights, early mornings. It's just how things are. Must get lonely." The words landed heavily between them. She should dismiss them, laugh them off. But instead, she hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any words could. Mr. Collins moved to the seat across from her, closer now. Not too close. Just close enough. "Loneliness can make people do strange things," he murmured. Emma's fingers tightened around her mug. The air between them crackled with something unspoken, something neither of them dared name. She could still leave. She could still stop this. But she didn't move. His hand brushed against hers, light, almost accidental. But they both knew better. Her breath hitched. The clock on the wall ticked, a sharp, rhythmic reminder of time passing, of moments that couldn't be undone. Then her phone buzzed. David. Again. The spell broke. Emma snatched her hand back, stood too quickly. "I should go." Mr. Collins didn't stop her. He only watched, an unreadable look in his eyes. "Emma," he said as she reached the door. She turned. "You don't have to be lonely," he said softly. "Not if you don't want to be." Her chest tightened. She walked out without another word, but the door she closed behind her no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like an invitation waiting to be accepted.